This is a story of great forces, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes. It's a tale of fantastic creatures. Eagles and bats. Monkeys and jaguars. This is Central America and the Caribbean, the cradle of some of the greatest civilizations in human history. Nature is about to step into the past on a four-part journey through one of the most dynamic and diverse regions of the world. And as we explore the natural history of Central America and the Caribbean, we will discover how it became the foundation of profound and fascinating cultures: the Maya, scholars of the rainforest; the mysterious Taino of the Caribbean islands; the warrior Aztecs and their empire in the desert. Each found hope and fear in the natural world and a meaning for life in the secrets of the wild. But like all great stories, ours starts at the beginning, at the very moment of creation, when all this was a brave new world.
Major funding for Spirits of the Jaguar is provided by Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television. Major corporate support is made possible by Canon, providing the power of imaging to express your visions at home and at work. And by Ford, maker of Ford Expedition, the full-size sport utility that can seat up to 9 and can tow up to 8,000 pounds. The new Ford Expedition, the only way to get there. This program is also made possible by annual financial support from viewers like you.
The people of Central America believed that in the beginning, the gods had called a world into existence. But the gods fought among themselves and destroyed that world. They destroyed and created the world several times over. The forces of nature were their weapons. Then the gods joined together to fight the great earth monster. After the battle, her broken body arose from the waters to form the mountains of the world. The land the gods had created from the ceaseless battle of fire, water, and wind is one of the richest and most diverse on the planet. The spines of the earth monster run the length of Central America, from mountain lakes to high volcanoes, from pine-studded canyons to deserts. In the south, rainforests cover the steep slopes, and to the east lie the tropical waters of the Caribbean. From this great diversity arose cultures and civilizations shaped by their natural surroundings. In the Caribbean was the least known of the cultures, the Taíno. From the tropical forests came the Maya, and in the harsh northern deserts of Mexico arose the Aztecs. The creation of the region, its wildlife, and its civilizations is the story of Spirits of the Jaguar. This program explores the creation of Central America, the land that stretches between the great continents of North and South America, and the Caribbean islands that lie to the east. At the eastern boundary of this new world are the small tropical islands that divide the Caribbean from the Atlantic. Inside the small isles lie the large Caribbean islands of Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica. Farther west still lies Central America, but 150 million years ago, there was only water. The islands of the Caribbean were forged by undersea volcanoes far to the west, more than 600 miles out in the Pacific Ocean. The myth told of a violent volcanic origin and Earth rising from dark waters. Over the millennia, islands did emerge from the battle of sea and fiery land, these rocky isles growing larger and more numerous. This volcanic archipelago formed the edge of one of the vast plates of the Earth's crust. As the plate began to move, the islands started out on an extraordinary journey eastward, towards the gap between North and South America. As they approached, the islands were squeezed and scrunched together, scraping against the continents. While the islands were docked, the first passengers took this opportunity to come on board. The wind carried tiny spores of ferns which settled bare slopes. Over the millennia, the islands were clothed in The first vertebrate to come aboard the islands was not one of the mighty dinosaurs that dominated the continents, but was probably a frog. This pioneer hopped up the chain of islands from South America. This particular frog had one great advantage. Unlike other frogs, it didn't require water to breed. The tadpoles complete their development within the confines of the egg. The miniature colonists emerge, ready to spread out into the dark forests. The forests had been brightened with the arrival of flowering plants, and with the flowers, butterflies joined the passenger list. Many butterflies can fly long distances and could easily have reached the Caribbean islands in their present position, but the glasswing is not one of them. It's a puny flyer, able to flutter no more than a few yards through the still air of the deep forest. The glasswing butterfly must have joined the islands when they were docked between the two continents, but the islands did not stay docked for long. 60 million years ago, they set sail with their passengers away from North America, cruising to the northeast. Now they were truly Caribbean islands. As they traveled, their passengers evolved into unique island forms. Then, 50 million years ago, the northern islands crashed into the submerged rocky mass of the Bahamas Bank. This collision created the largest of the Caribbean islands, Cuba. Larger animals couldn't count on the wind to transport them to the islands. They had to swim on their own. Among the first to make it across the water was the iguana. Baby rock iguanas, no more than 8 inches long, paddled more than 125 miles from North America to arrive on Cuba. These early pioneers were to form a dynasty of island iguanas. Cuba, all those millions of years ago, was covered in forests, festooned with bromeliads and orchids. This tiny bird, the tody, was already on Cuba, a stowaway while the islands were sailing out from North America. The tody is no marathon flyer. Its short, stubby wings are designed for brief flights in pursuit of insects on the island. While the tody was one of the smallest inhabitants, the iguanas grew into giants over 6 feet long. Head bobbing is a threat to fend off other iguanas. They fight over food such as cycads, for these fierce-looking reptiles are actually vegetarians. The cycads are very ancient plants, early arrivals which may have evolved red fruit, especially for the iguanas. Rock iguanas are fiercely territorial. The males guard food and females against any challengers. The battle begins with head bobbing and bluffs, and escalates as the males inflate their bodies to exaggerate their size. If the displays fail, then real warfare breaks out. The victor is invariably the larger, stronger male. The loser has little chance of breeding. The iguana dynasty will be fathered by the dominant male. The toadies, too, defend a territory, the center of which is their nest. Like their distant ancestors, the kingfishers, the toadies nest in holes in banks. These diminutive birds have evolved over tens of millions of years into true Caribbean islanders, found nowhere else on Earth. The evidence about which creatures lived on the island so long ago comes from the sap of a tree. The copious amounts of sap not only engulfed stray feathers, it attracted insects. The unwary got stuck. The struggling insects attracted predators like the frog. The sap sealed the fate of every living thing in its way. They were frozen for eternity, preserved in amber, the fossilized sap. They form a record of island life 45 million years ago. The anther of a plant caught at the very instant of shedding its pollen. All these creatures had their own individual history of arrival. Lizards were carried to the Caribbean by currents of the sea. Other prisoners of amber, such as insects, had been carried to the islands on currents of air. Another early colonist came by air, the ancestors of the Cuban parrot. These birds had a built-in advantage over other colonizers. They always travel together and mate for life. A parrot, Adam and Eve, may have arrived together on this island Eden and founded a new dynasty. The most remarkable wind-assisted immigrant was the ancestor of the bee hummingbird of Cuba. It's the smallest bird in the world. The female's body is less than 1 inch long. While on the wing, her heart beats over 1,000 times per minute. The female is so small that she risks becoming entangled in a spider's web when she collects silk for her nest. Only the female builds the nest. The male's role is to guard against intruders. For this marvel of miniaturization, even small caterpillars appear threatening. As soon as they were born, baby iguanas sought to leave their Cuban island home. Driven by their instinct to disperse, they swam out to the other Caribbean islands. Cuba, closest to the mainland and the largest of the islands, was the source for much of the Caribbean wildlife. But then, while Cuba was firmly stuck on the Bahamas bank, a split appeared in the plate that carried these islands. The neighboring islands were moving away, heading eastward, and taking with them their own Noah's Arks of plants and animals. In their wake came a submerged island, which surfaced only 10 million years ago. This was Jamaica, the most distinctive of all the Caribbean islands. Millions of years underwater meant Jamaica emerged as virgin soil for new arrivals that would have been crushed by competition on the older islands. Today, it looks different and is different from any of them. The Jamaican streamer tail is one of the most dazzling members of a radiant family. Its ancestors arrived from Central America to fill the hummingbird vacancy on this new land. It uses that long tongue to sip nectar from the many flowers of Jamaica, such as the turnera. One of its favorite plants is the giant bromeliad. The flower spike is 3 feet tall and provides plenty of sugar-rich nectar to fuel the hummingbird's energetic flight. The cool, damp mountain forests of Jamaica are ideal for the growth of bromeliads. They adorn the branches, and the weight of this garden in the sky can amount to several tons on a single tree. Having no roots in the ground, bromeliads gather their water from the sky. The leaves are smooth and shaped like gutters. Rainwater runs down to collect in the base of the plant. The bromeliad is a pond in the sky. The plant, with its own water reservoir, is a miniature world inhabited by a host of creatures. There are even plankton swimming in this pint-sized ocean. These strange creatures are the young of a crab that has come to depend on the bromeliad. The female circulates the water, increasing the oxygen for her babies. They will grow up in the bromeliad, guarded by their mother. The crab is fiercely protective of her young. But in this instance, she is actually capturing food for them. This crab's way of life is unique, hidden in a pond 100 feet in the sky. Even this Lilliputian world has its predators. The Jamaican blackbird evolved an especially long-pointed bill to probe for food in the bromeliad. The blackbird even uses the pond to bathe in. Most of the inhabitants of the Caribbean had arrived by 2 million years ago. It was about that time that a global change, the Ice Age, had a dramatic effect on the Caribbean. The sea level gradually fell, and in place of shallow coral seas, sandbars, and then islands appeared. Where the sea had once been, there were mangroves and vast freshwater swamps. This new landscape offered an opportunity to one of the most recent and aggressive immigrants. The American crocodile. And to one of the few mammals that had made it out to the islands, the hutia. The hutia likes to feed in the small trees that are scattered through the swamps. The crocodiles like to feed on the hutia. Height appears to offer safety, but the hutia is trapped in an isolated tree. The crocodiles gather below the hapless hutia. The crocodile has an unusual but effective method of hunting. The mobile islands of the Caribbean are rafts still carrying their passengers eastward. They began life in the Pacific. They came through an open door. There was no connection between North and South America. But 15 million years ago, beyond the watery gap out in the Pacific, a new set of volcanic islands appeared on the horizon. These islands grew ever bigger and moved eastward, just as the Caribbean islands had before them. These new drifting islands were destined to become Central America, the land bridge that would connect the two continents. While they were still out in the Pacific Ocean, the islands were the location for a remarkable spectacle. Each year, turtles, the nomads of the oceans, would visit these isolated islands. And females mated. Then the females waited for the cool of the evening. The beaches were empty. There were no land predators on these newborn islands. This was an ideal place for the turtles to lay their eggs. For 1,000,000 generations, while the moving islands were in the Pacific, hordes of Ridley's turtles came to nest on the beaches. Turtles come ashore only to lay their eggs. Within hours, the females retreat to their oceanic world. Traveler, the humpback whale. They swam south each winter from the frigid North Atlantic and Pacific to meet in the warm, shallow waters around the growing chain of islands. Here the mothers gave birth. The seas were benign, offering not just warmth to the one-ton newborn, but a blue world free of predators. But 3 million years ago, the volcanic islands formed a tight chain, dividing the Atlantic and Pacific populations into separate worlds. The islands were now so close together that the first island adventurers were able to travel among them, like the three-toed sloth. The sloth came from South America. Famously slow, it is in fact an excellent swimmer. It was able to cross from one volcanic island to another to colonize this new tropical world. With their large, curved claws, sloths are able to move skillfully up and down trees. Although perfectly at home in the water or high in the canopy, sloths are curiously helpless when on the ground. Sloths are the only vertebrates besides owls that have the ability to turn their head from forward to back 180 degrees, giving them a great advantage in their search for food. Climbing high into the canopy, they have their choice among their favorite foods: blossoms, fruit, and leaves. Sloths change trees only when the food supply runs out. The volcanic islands continued their slow progress eastward. Finally, 2 to 3 million years ago, they closed the gap between North and South America. Central America was born. One of the first creatures to venture down this land bridge was the Coatamundi. It came from the north and found food in abundance on the once isolated turtle beaches. The coati has a powerful sense of smell, and no turtle nest was safe from these new explorers. The Ridley turtle's world had changed forever. The new predators were there because this land was no longer an island. It was now part of a land bridge dividing two oceans. These turtles hatching on a Pacific beach were separated from their relatives born on the Atlantic side. In time, they evolved into two different species. For the babies of the Pacific Ridley turtle, the immediate concern was to reach the ocean alive. The killing jaws and sharp beaks were many, but the army of baby turtles overwhelmed the predator's hunger. Thousands made the cruel journey down the beach. The lucky ones succeeded. In the early days of Central America, the land was covered in deciduous woods and grass, ideal for another traveler from North America, the deer. From the south came monkeys. The trees were their highway. They had evolved in the extensive forests of South America. As the trees colonized the land bridge, so did the monkeys. The fruits and flowers of the trees provided the monkeys and other colonists like the iguana with food. The squirrel traveled from North America, where there were no monkeys. Both creatures feed on the same range of fruit, nuts, and flowers. Would Central America be big enough for both of them? This is not simply a fight over fruit or flowers. Monkeys also have a taste for meat. The most powerful predator of all came from the north, the jaguar. It was to travel down the Central American corridor as South American creatures moved north. For the first time, jaguars and anteaters crossed paths. The anteater was to move as far north as Mexico. The jaguar's dominion would stretch over most of South America. The land bridge was a highway for mammals from both continents. Strange South Americans, like the armadillo, moved up through swamp and grassland. The grassland was home to the armadillo's food, and its sandy soils proved easy digging. This early colonist is a primitive mammal with a curious biology. The female always gives birth to quadruplets, and the babies are genetically identical. The ancient armadillo from the south and one of the advanced mammals of North America met on the grasslands of the land bridge. The skunk is a relative of the weasel, but it is best known for its odoriferous defense. The skunk's handstand lifts its stink gland in the air to help carry the smell. The land colonized by these mammals was dry grassland, but as the Ice Age ended in the north, the climate here became hot and rainy. As the weather grew wetter, Central America changed its character. In many areas, the grasslands were replaced by tropical rainforests. The land bridge now offered opportunities to a new range of creatures. Army ants stormed out of the forests of South America, killing and feeding on any insect in their path. Leafcutter ants trimmed the trees to feed their colonies. From the north came a curious relative of the horse. Like the ants, the tapir fed on the leaves of this new tropical forest. The linking of two isolated continents and the variety of landscapes have made this realm of the jaguar one of the most diverse and heavily populated wildlife habitats on Earth. The kinkajou, a relative of one of the first pioneers from the north, the coati-mundi. But this creature could not live on the original grasslands. It spends its whole life in trees. It has given up any taste for meat and eggs and lives on a diet of nectar, flowers, and fruits of the forest. The jaguar and kinkajou, northern immigrants, share the nighttime forest with creatures from South America, including the yapak. The yapak trawls the water, waiting for the touch of a fish against its sensitive feet. It's a marsupial, so specialized for an aquatic existence that its pouch faces backwards to avoid filling with water and drowning the baby. Central America became a testing ground where species that evolved separately in North and South America were put into direct competition with each other. As they adapted to this contest, the land developed an atmosphere all its own. Mantled howlers and tamanduas, arboreal descendants of the giant anteater, feast in the canopy. They share the forest with birds that are entirely Central American, like Montezumas or a pendula. In the forests that cloak the high mountain slopes lives one of the most beautiful birds in the world. The ancestors of the resplendent quetzal came from South America, but today quetzals are confined to the cloud forests of Central America. Female quetzals aren't impressed by superficial appearances. However fabulous his feathers, the male still has to show how good he is by digging trial nests. The females have a determined, practical streak. She will critically check the nest sites of several males. The male's chances of mating depend on her decision. Dissatisfied with his show house, the female leaves to check out another male. An equally beautiful candidate awaits his chance to show off his handiwork. Scientists do not know exactly what sways the female's final decision, but they suspect that the gorgeous plumage of the male is not irrelevant. The feathers of the quetzal had a powerful impact on the last species to enter this new world. Humans were very late on the scene. Their date of arrival is not certain, but it's thought that they came from the north some 13,000 years ago. Bands of nomads moved down North America and into Mexico and Central America. They were hunters, following the largest mammals that existed then, like the imperial mammoth that fed on the lush vegetation of lake margins. To kill such a huge and powerful beast, the hunters had to get close, and that required careful communication, coordination, and great courage. About 7,000 years ago, changing climate and overhunting led to the mammoth's extinction. But the hunters stayed on. They turned to the other riches of the lake, the birds and the fishes. And then, some 5,000 years ago, humans began reshaping the land. They began to control the plants they needed. They began to farm. Fertilized with the fish from the lakes, this plant would revolutionize America. Maize was domesticated from a native grass. With the advent of agriculture, people began to settle in permanent communities, which grew ever larger and more complex. Fed on maize, great civilisations sprang up in Central America. Their character was to be shaped by the land and the plants and animals that surrounded them. The most mysterious culture was that of the Taino, the people of the Caribbean. The Taino way of life was based on the wealth of the tropical sea. In the mountains and deserts of Mexico evolved another and very different culture. The Aztecs were a warrior race who built a great empire. Yet they lived in fear that the sun would not rise unless they spilled human blood. In the tropical forests emerged the most elaborate civilization of the Americas, the Maya. Join us tomorrow night for the story of the Maya and their world in the next Spirits of the Jaguar.
To find out more about nature, visit us on the PBS homepage at the address on your screen. Major funding for Spirits of the Jaguar is provided by Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television. Major corporate support is made possible by Canon, providing the power of imaging to express your visions at home and at work. And by Ford, maker of the 1997 Taurus, the sedan that's giving America more of what it wants in an automobile: room, power, and performance. Ford Taurus. This program is also made possible by annual financial support from viewers like you.
Spirits of the Jaguar is available on home video cassette for $19.95 per episode or $69.95 for the 4-part set plus shipping. To order, call 1-800-336-1917 or write to the address on your screen. Please specify episode title.
This is PBS.